Successful mentors do more than just give advice. They actually understand the context of the situation the person's talking about. They look for empathy, understanding, and clarity about the feelings also underpinning the situation. They might also want to talk about the workplace environment, which is understanding how advice will translate into activities and how those activities will be responded to in the workplace. Sometimes mentees are working in an unequal, unfair, unjust situation. In fact, at some point in our careers, all of us are. So having a sense of equity and equality is really important to getting the right kind of impact. And if you want the world to get a little bit better, it needs to be more equal, more equitable. So if you think that's important, stick with me because I've got some tips for you. But first, what I want to do is break down what is equity and what is equality. So equality is the ability to have an equal playing field. Now, let's take an example. Two students want to go to university and they are given money to do so, an equal amount of money to both parties. That's an example of equality. Both people given the same resources so they can do whatever they need to do. Now let's look at equity. Equity is more complicated. You might have seen some of these videos on YouTube.
Steps forward if you never wondered where your next meal was going to come from. And it's only because you have this big of a head start that you're possibly going to win this race called life.
Where we understand equity because we understand that different people are at different points in time given different chances in life. They even have different starts in life. An example of that would be the two students who want to go to school. One is very wealthy and the other is poor. Given the same amount of money, these two situations are not equal. Giving the poor student a real chance means giving them more money. So they actually have an equal playing field. They can get into the same level of school. This is what equality and equity mean. And one of the biggest factors that faces the world today about equality and equity is the fact that it impacts the world's GDP, the ability to be productive and create enough for everyone. That means people have less food, less housing, less opportunities in the world. And this point is underlined by Harvard Business Review's recent report on inequality. It says that jobs that are coded male have more prestige and pay than jobs that are so-called female. The strange thing about this, the study found, is that it's not related to actually gender-based male jobs. It's related to jobs women take. The minute a woman takes a job, it's already coded for lower value. That has no logic to it because women are doing the same job in these cases. That's where equity comes in. And you know, there's a direct relationship, right? It's not that only women are suffering, and they certainly are. It's also that men are suffering. Men are suffering because often they're married to women, and the whole household income goes down when women aren't justly paid. So this isn't a woman problem, this is a world problem. That's what the GDP shows us. So let's talk about how mentors make a difference. One is show leadership when talking about equality, expecting equality, understanding what that word means and how it applies to your job and the problems you're solving with that mentee or with yourself is a way of showing leadership when talking about equality. Expecting equality is part of that leadership by example. You are a role model, so be one. Increase awareness of equity. As we talked about, equity is a little known concept, which is why International Women's Day focused on it. Equity is an area that needs improvement everywhere in the world, especially where we're not all starting out the gate at the same pace. When you advocate for empathy, you advocate for understanding someone else's point of view, not from your own chair, but from their chair. That's hard to do, but it's meaningful. First, work to understand. That's a mantra everyone can follow. When you do that, when you show that empathy to your mentee and your way of working includes this concept of first seek to understand, you're going to be showing by leadership again these kinds of skills. And the next point is about active listening. It's not just taking it in, it's reflecting it back to make sure you understood. To not just ask about the facts, but ask about the feelings. How did that make you feel? And then check also with active listening to make sure you understand the situation, the context of the problem, because you might offer a solution that will never work in that context. So active listening first seeks to understand, reflect back, and then put context around whatever's being discussed. Promote diversity and inclusion. You can do this simply by talking about diversity and inclusion and making sure everyone has a voice. That's a voice in your mentoring relationship, it's a voice in the discussion of the context of that mentee's problem, and it can be in your own workplace. Provide feedback. If you think someone's not being mindful of these points, say something. Help coach them so they can improve. Ask your mentee to set goals around this area. They can do better. They can do better to improve their own situation and also the situation of those around them. So make part of your mentoring goals something that includes equity, inclusion, diversity, whatever it needs to be to make sense for your mentoring relationship. But one of the things I just want to mention here is that all of these topics we've just discussed are important to emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is something you can build on. Anyone can. And it's something you should make a priority. Emotional intelligence accounts for nearly 90% of what sets high performers apart from peers with similar technical skills and knowledge, says a recent study. Study after study has shown emotional intelligence is important. You can build it. And with these 7 things I just talked about, you absolutely can build emotional intelligence in yourself and in those around you, which makes for a very high-performing team and workplace. If you'd like to know more about this topic, I'll put a link to my blog below so you can read more. And if you want to know more about what makes teams high-performing, check out this video. Join me next time on ProjectSkillsMentor.com. Bye-bye, everybody.